view of my screen.
You're just bright.
Okay, yeah. I got that Opal camera. I pulled the trigger on a $300 camera, so I can adjust lighting.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Nice. You've got good contrast.
Cool.
All right, welcome everybody. I am Dylan here at SparkLoop. I'm the content marketer here at SparkLoop, and today, as you know, we're joined by Manny Reyes of Workweek, currently of Morning Brew. And so, apologies on a little bit delay here, but Manny and I were just chatting before, and then realized we were running a few minutes late. So, thanks for waiting and being patient. We're happy to have you here. First off, some quick housekeeping notes while a few more people enter the room. First of all, share in the chat where you're from. Love seeing where people are joining us from around the world, and also feel free to share a link to Twitter or to your newsletter if you want to share that as well. We'd love to see what people are doing with their newsletters and online. So enter all that, and then also please enter in your chat any questions you have for Manny. First, I'm going to let him give us an intro on his experience and sort of what he's done with Workweek now and what he did with Morning Brew, and then just start throwing your questions in the chat for him as they come up, and I'll pin them and I'll kind of ask them as they come. So with that, I want to introduce Manny Reyes. So Manny, can you give us a little bit of a background of your paid ad experience and kind of how you got into it and where you are now?
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks for having me here, Dylan. I'm excited to see what questions come up. So currently at Workweek, I'm the senior growth manager here. So managing all mainly the team that runs the 18 plus, I think 20 plus ad accounts now for each creator under the Workweek umbrella. So it's all B2B newsletters. Within their own respective industry, we have kind of some that overlap a little bit. We have a couple marketing newsletters, we have a couple healthcare newsletters, but they all have their own vibe, their own tone, obviously with each creator. So it's been very fun. Recently, I joined Workweek back in September of last year. Very fun, lots of new learnings coming from Morning Brew, very B2C on what I worked on, to all B2B focus here at Workweek. And so, my previous life was at Morning Brew when I joined in the late winter of 2020, and really just got to understand paid growth like at a very, very large scale, very, very quickly. It was definitely like I joined, throw this guy to the wolves. We have hundreds of thousands to spend kind of thing. All love to Austin Reef and Alex Lieberman for bringing me on. It was definitely one of those high growth phases that I joined. But throughout that year, just focused on working with the team to allocate budget all over the place, where it was Facebook ads, TikTok ads, Snapchat ads, sponsoring influencers, sponsoring other newsletters. You name the channel for acquisition, we were doing it. A lot of my focus was on the paid ad side with Facebook ads, TikTok ads, and all that. And so that's really like my cup of tea nowadays. So happy to elaborate more if there's questions,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got a few even to start us off. Like, I think about a newsletter, the scale of Morning Brew, and obviously you guys had a pretty significant ad budget, ad spend. I'm curious if you are, how would you approach, I guess, let's just dive in. How would you approach like different size newsletters for ad spend? So like say a 10K newsletter, 10K subscriber list versus like a 100K subscriber list. And I'm sure the subscriber list doesn't quite matter as much as necessarily the revenue they're bringing in, but what would be kind of your difference in approach between, drastically different size newsletters when it comes to starting with a paid growth ad strategy?
Yeah, sure thing. So you mentioned one of those words, the main thing, like revenue behind the newsletter. I think monetization really comes into play and works almost in tandem with your growth budgets and your ad budgets. So if you really have nailed down what your payback period is, and we can talk about that, like how long it is until you will get the money back that you paid a subscriber for. If you really nail that down, you can start really realizing like, okay, I should double down and spend 10 to 20,000, 30 or 40,000 a month on ads. But that has to be solidified before you just focus on, unless, you won the lottery and you just know you want to get your your subscriber list to 500,000 very quickly, then you can spend all the ad budget you want. But I think those two have to work kind of close together so that you can really understand where to start off on. I guess the strategy between like a 10K newsletter versus a 100K subscriber newsletter, I think really just comes down to understanding your total addressable market, also your TAM or whatever, just because there is going to get to a point where a newsletter, and especially whether you're B2C or B2B, you really have to understand how many subscribers you can feasibly get on your list towards your target CPA. At some point or another, if you are trying to start off pretty small, you can continue, month over month, you can continue to acquire at your target CPA. But once you really start scaling, we saw it at Morning Brew that there's, millions obviously that are interested in getting the news in a fun way. There's even more millions of people interested in finance and investing on that. So that's why we could capture so many millions of subscribers on the Morning Brew newsletter. But when you think of, when I think of like a Workweek newsletter, like Leaders Lens, which is like a leadership newsletter, there's not millions upon millions upon millions of leaders that we are going to capture. So we have to think very sustainably about the growth, the ad budgets that are going to go towards it. So that's really one thing that I would really like take a step back, figure out what that looks like before you really start making projections on how many subscribers you're going to be at in a year, 2 or 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that kind of brings me back actually even further back is like, when should a newsletter operator consider like paid growth? Like when do you know like the time is right to invest in that?
So I guess in like, if I would say like plain English, and from what I've heard from everyone, also understanding, again, going back to your payback period, to like how well your monetization model is at in that phase. I think your monetization model normally gets to like a pretty good phase if you do have a pretty good flywheel, somewhere around like the 15K to 25K subscriber range. If you have it down in that range, I think it's a good range to start going into paid ads, especially if you know that it's going to be something that you're going to get a return on. So you always want to start off, look at a month or two of data when you start off on ads, and then figure out if you can continue scaling sustainably or stay within the same ad budget sustainably. But I think if I were to have to give a number on that, I would say, and from what I've heard, there's a lot of talk about this on Twitter also, it's probably within that 15 to 25K subscriber range. Some people may want to get to 50K first, or 100K, but anything under 10K, I don't think you should start running paid ads, mainly because I think you would want to see if there's a product market fit. Find your organic subscribers through Reddit, through putting out threads on Twitter, all that stuff. And if you can get to that point and know that there's an even bigger market out there, then that there's a way to go about it with ads, I guess.
Right, and also taking into consideration what you're actually earning with the newsletter too. If you're not earning a dime, then you definitely have to consider how you're going to monetize. I got a few questions coming in, but just before I hop into those, it also sparked another question: is would the way you are monetizing your newsletter depend on how you would strategize your paid growth, your paid ads? So like if you, for example, with a newsletter like Morning Brew, where you're monetizing primarily with advertising revenue, and you can bank on a certain amount of, every time you hit send, you can bank on a certain amount of revenue coming in from advertisers, versus somebody who's running, they're filling up different revenue streams with courses, maybe community sales, maybe affiliate sales, in conjunction with ads. Would that, I guess, change the way you strategize with your ad budget?
I do. Yeah, I do think it would, especially if you were doing one or the other. Like if you were doing just ads, or if you were doing no ads and you were focusing on getting your subscribers down a funnel to your courses, to one-on-one coaching that you may offer, kind of stuff. I do think there's a different strategy, mainly on really focusing on the quality of subscriber that you're acquiring. And there's a lot of different definitions around what a quality subscriber looks like. But I think you would like,
Yeah.
for example, if you were a newsletter that wasn't running ads and you were just trying to get them down the funnel to, take a course, join a community or whatever, I think you would really have to start running ads. Look at a month or two of data. And if you know that most of your growth is coming from just ads in the past 2 months and it was very little organic, you can then point the finger if things are going really good or really bad towards the down funnel and say, okay, I'm not acquiring the right audience. If you're not getting a lot of signups for your courses or stuff like that, and they're not going down the funnel in the time that you expected them to, you can then point the finger, like I said, and say, okay, maybe I'm not acquiring the right audience. Maybe I'm not running the right ads. I'm not putting the right messaging out there to acquire the right subscriber to go towards that. When it comes to ads, I think it is a different strategy because, most advertisers, are just looking at it on a CPM basis. So from what I know, most newsletters are selling it on a CPM basis. They're looking at your open rate, so that's always got to be healthy. That's just something that you got to do with your content and making sure that you're not also just acquiring the average Joe to your niche newsletter to make sure the open rate is high.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I would look at it for sure. I do think it would affect it. It's just a lot of different variables. I think it'd be more of a yes, like a hard yes answer, if you're doing one or the other kind of thing. If you're doing both, I think there's a happy medium in whatever I just said, maybe.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And everybody's going to have a little bit of a different approach to it because everybody's in a unique situation.
Totally.
So it's it's definitely not a one size fits all solution. Okay, so first few questions. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name, but Laquan. She asks, how many companies do you think are out there that are scaling with paid ads?
Companies, I'm assuming companies and with their newsletters. Yeah.
Yeah, newsletter.
If I had to guess, is the question just looking for a number? Oh man. God.
I would venture to say probably more now than ever before.
Yes. But if I have to guess, because I do know, I stay pretty on top of how many companies are out there, how many newsletters are out there running ads. My guess is, just from what I know, a little under 60. I'm looking at Workweek, I'm looking at Morning Brew, I'm looking at Industry Dive, I'm looking at just all the indie creator newsletters that I know that run ads. It might be somewhere between 75 to 100, I would say. I'm not sure if it would be over 100 right now that I know of. It quite possibly could. But my hunch says it's somewhere between 75 to 100 newsletters out there, or companies that have newsletters running ads towards them. So it seems like a small number, but there is overlap of audience at a certain point. So there is definitely competition between all these at some point or another, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't even take into account people who are running, paid recommendations through SparkLoop, for example, with a partner program. That's another kind of form of almost paid advertising.
Yeah, that's also one of those things that probably definitely puts the number over 100, because I know there is a lot of newsletters that you just mentioned like that doing the Upscribe and the SparkLoop or Beehive Boost and whatever, and not running ads. Yeah. That's their main focus of growth. So it definitely be over 100 if you want to include that, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's becoming more and more common. So like I said, probably more now than ever before, but probably hard to put in.
Yeah, and if you ask me that question a year from now, I think the number would be double, because I don't see this going away in terms of the growth and the market entry that people are seeing to start a newsletter. They're enjoying the business model and whatnot, and they know how to make it work. So yeah, I definitely would say, if you ask me the question in a year or two, it might definitely be 2x, possibly 2.5x.
Yeah, I would expect definitely just the amount of newsletters we see coming in that are growing quickly and wanting to scale that. I could imagine it would at least double. How fast would you, Skip asked a question, how fast would you scale working ad sets? And does it matter how big your target audience is in this ad set?
How fast would we scale working ad sets? So I'm assuming the question is just related to spend on an ad set. Daily budgets is what I mainly look at when I'm looking at an ad account, or working with my team and looking at the ad accounts. I am a hardcore believer in not resetting the learning phase. This is just related to Facebook ads. I'm a hardcore believer in.
Could you dive in a little bit into the learning phase too?
Sure thing. So if you are or aren't running Facebook ads, the learning phase is when you are in this period of time where the data that you're getting in isn't like the end all be all, because whenever the learning phase resets or whenever you start a new ad set, a new campaign, it's a point in time where you're spending and the CPA is going to be probably a lot higher than your target CPA. Not a lot, but it's definitely going to be higher than your target CPA because the data is Facebook is trying to gather as much data as possible to say, okay, we're in a good spot. We know who to target. We know who to target more often with whatever budget you give us, because we've seen these people click and we've seen them convert. Whenever you reset the learning phase, and just look up Facebook ads learning phase, and there's a ton of literature in terms of what it is that resets the learning phase. Scaling budgets is one of them. Changing creative is another, but scaling budgets is one of them. And I think I'm fairly certain that hasn't changed. That it's once you go past 20%, if you are increasing your daily budget on an ad set by more than 20% on a daily basis, you can expect the learning phase to reset on that ad set, meaning that you're never going to get to the point where the data is just accruing over time and your CPA is just going to continue to get better. So with that said, I would say to always scale an ad set. If you're trying to scale aggressively, 15 to 20%. If you're just trying to scale it, if you're seeing good results after like a week or two of that ad set working, good creative is in there and whatnot, keep it from like 10 to 15% here and there. Just don't go changing it daily by like 25 to 30% because you're probably not going to see the results that you want. You definitely want to give something whenever you make a change like that does reset the learning phase. You want to give it like 4 to 5 days at the bare minimum. And like I said, I'm a hardcore believer in not resetting the learning phase. So if I see an ad that is working really well in an ad set and it's been running for 2 weeks, cool. I'm not going to change it. Well, my team is going to be still creating other ads. We're going to have them in the backlog for when that ad does maybe fatigue later down the line. But if it's one ad that is running for 2 to 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, I have seen ads that run for like months on end and they continue to perform over time. And we do not reset the learning phase. We just continue to ride that wave as long as possible. So it's a lot. I think I went a little off course, but definitely don't scale on a daily basis more than 15 to 20%, I would say.
Okay, good to know. Makes sense. And you said 45 days.
Sorry.
Is that what you?
4 to 5.
4 to 5 days. Okay,
yeah.
Okay. I was like, 45, that's a significant.
Yeah, it is. Okay. That is. But no, 4 to 5, if you do make a change that resets the learning phase, try to not make another change that does that for 4 to 5 days, just so that, Facebook isn't, again, resetting and it has to gather up new data and it's never going to build on its own.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense. Leverage the algorithm to benefit you, right? Sweet. So Roy asks, how differently would you strategize a B2B newsletter versus a consumer-based newsletter like B2C, I assume he means, as far as growth and ads?
It's a good question and something that I had to do, honestly, going from Morning Brew to Workweek. So I'll start off on the B2B side. When I think about trying to gather up in like a market of industry professionals, in one, we'll just talk about the marketing millennials right now. It's a Workweek newsletter. It's attracting marketers kind of like from all different ranges in terms of like seniority and whatnot. But when I think about it, you always want to make sure that your messaging is very, very clear in terms of who you want the subscriber to be. So if you look at any of like the Workweek creators ads, you'll see that our messaging is very, very tailored and very, very pointed at saying, this is who we think should subscribe to the newsletter. We say it in a more creative way to like make the ad look pretty nice and have it be more attractive. But we want to make sure that we're not leaving any question out there in terms of who the subscriber should be, because we know that if we get a little bit off course and try to make the best ad, some cool messaging and make sure that we get the highest click rate kind of thing, or get tons of clicks, the conversion rate might already be low, but even then, if you end up subscribing someone who is not very much in that B2B audience, you just wasted your money. They're not going to stick around. The content isn't for them, kind of thing. So you want to make sure that that's number one, to make sure that you're not leaving any question out there in terms of who it is that you're going to be subscribing to, or who you want to be subscribed to your B2B newsletter. I think that really ties it all up in terms of B2B, because that just is a domino effect. If you do it the right way or the wrong way. If you do it the right way, people are going to, you're going to have a really high conversion rate on your landing page because you didn't fool anyone into clicking, and now they hit a landing page for a marketing newsletter. That's not going to fool anyone. And two is like, once they start getting the newsletter, they actually expected the content. They might find value in the content, and they're going to stay a subscriber over time. So again, I think that pretty much wraps it up for a B2B newsletter. For B2C, I would say it's mainly a matter of, I don't know. I think there is really just having the best creative, the best messaging possible to get the highest click-through rates and the highest conversion rates, because B2C is might be a much broader audience that you're trying to acquire. So at that point, you're really just trying to go for the lowest CPA possible for a subscriber that is going to continue to be engaged. And when I say going towards like the cheapest or the lowest CPA possible, I think I say that because it's very possible to acquire a B2C audience like that for a very low price, especially with ads, given that like CPMs aren't like drastically high when you're advertising. But I think it just comes down to understanding that there is a much larger total addressable market. And when it comes to getting a quality B2C subscriber, I think it just comes down to, again, making sure that your messaging isn't fooling anyone. Like they know what they're expecting by clicking and subscribing to their newsletter, so that they're not off-put when they start receiving a couple issues. And then making sure your content is great. I think those go hand in hand with like your growth and ads for a B2C newsletters. Make sure that your content is great so that you can get 75% plus of the subscribers that you got from your ads to actually continue to be an engaged reader over the course of their lifetime, 6 to 9 months, 9 to 12 months. So that's kind of how I look at the strategy. I know it's very surface level. You'd probably have to talk to like a media mogul like my boss Adam Ryan or someone else that would give you a very, very in-depth answer. But that's kind of how I would see things for the most part there.
Yeah, it makes sense. And again, it's very nuanced, right? A lot of this stuff it really comes down to the type of newsletter that you're running and the content you're delivering to. So challenging to wrap it all up at a catch-all, but I think that was a good summary. Nathan asks us, can you walk through your payback method? How are you cohorting newsletter subs and measuring LTV between cohorts math-wise? And then operationally, how are you getting all of that data in one place to get a channel view of LTV to CAC over time? So let's start with the first question because there's a lot there. Can you walk through your payback method? How are you cohorting newsletter subs and measuring LTV between cohorts?
So I will say, Nathan, this is a loaded question. Mainly because it's not a one size fits all kind of question for sure, like I mentioned at the beginning. But when it comes to looking at your payback method, you're really like looking at the revenue that you're bringing in from that newsletter, understanding how it ties back to your cost per subscriber. And when I say cost per subscriber, I would look at blended, and what that is looking at your blended CPA on, and what that is your paid CPA is what you are paying for a subscriber through your ads. Your blended CPA is what you are paying for subscribers from the total volume of paid and organic subs. So when you're looking at your payback period, you want to use the blended CPA there. And I guess when it comes to cohorting newsletter subs and measuring LTV between cohorts, so I think this is a topic that is also like all over Twitter in terms of like how people, what's the right way kind of thing. Like that's always a discussion. And I don't think I will give the answer that most people agree with, because there's like apparently like 5 or 6 different ways to go about it. In terms of cohorting newsletter subs and measuring the LTV, goes back to like the engagement of those subscribers, where you're looking at the open rates, and another metric that I would look at for engagement is click rates. Open rates is one of those metrics that obviously like they are somewhat more inflated nowadays with Apple's privacy, and the beacons are opening on their own. But I think the industry just has to look at it directionally still, and understand that it's not. If you say you have a 55% open rate, it probably isn't 100% accurate that 55% of your subscribers open. There's definitely still some trickle in there of Apple privacy stuff going into play. But you can cohort newsletter subscribers just like that when it comes to seeing like what is an engaged subscriber. Is it? I remember at Morning Brew, they used to do this where an engaged subscriber, or call it like a gold standard subscriber, is a subscriber that opens 6+ of their first 12 newsletters that you sent. That was one way to start cohorting. But that was before the whole Apple privacy stuff. So now you may want to like include like they opened 9+ or 10+ of their first 12, and they clicked at least twice within their first 12 newsletters. So stuff like that is how you can incorporate clicks in there. And I guess I probably wouldn't. I would have to like apologize to Nathan for not wanting to go very, very deep into the math, because I wouldn't want to steer anyone wrong. Again, going back to the different ways to do this, I think there's definitely like a lot of literature on this. If you look up payback period on Twitter, just search it. I 200% guarantee that you will find 3 different conversations in terms of how people do this for their own user, because it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. And again, I probably wouldn't want to steer anyone wrong. Off the top of my head, I don't do this at Workweek. It's mainly our revenue team, our ops team, that does it, like for all of our creators. What they do and how they do that math ends up affecting my team and our growth budgets. So I have full trust in their math. It is a beast of a task, I will say. So it's not something that I dabble in too much. But I would probably have to, probably defer to Twitter or some other literature that you can find, Nathan, just to be able to go into the math a little bit deeper and more as granular as you asked. I think the second part of the question, how are you getting all that data in one place? So getting all that data in one place, I will say is a challenge that probably any newsletter operator media company has. I don't know, maybe a newsletter operator on Beehive might have less of a challenge with this, because they have that infrastructure set out to like give you all the data possible. But if it's like more of a media company that you're looking at, you definitely want to be pulling in, or you definitely want to be looking at 2 different like sources of truth of data, possibly. Like for us, we look at Google Analytics and we look at sale through, and we try to make sure that they're somewhat one-to-one wherever possible, so that we know that we're not going to be steered wrong if we go towards one or the other. Again, with Beehive, it's pretty all-inclusive, to where you can very much rely on the data just in that one platform. But if you're using any other platform, I definitely would recommend you look at 2 different sources of truth for the data, and then try to combine them into one. I guess to get a channel view of LTV to CAC over time. Yeah, and again, that ends up coming back to revenue, and seeing what it is month over month versus what you're paying for a subscriber, like on a blended CAC basis. Just so that it's something that you can, I guess, tie back to each other monthly, and then in 6 months' time, look at your payback period, try to calculate your payback period again to see if your revenue is matching up back to what your projected payback period was. Again, I don't think I went granular enough for Nathan in terms of the math, but it is a very loaded question, and one that I would not want to steer anyone wrong. Just off the top of my head math, I wouldn't want anyone to take it like super like from like copy and paste kind of method. You know what I mean? So because it is definitely something that
Totally.
could affect your business positively or negatively if I gave you the wrong answer, Nathan. So I would defer to someone else or just go to Twitter and then you can read up on there. And you can probably DM me and I can have a more clear answer if I can go into some spreadsheets on my own and give you a better example, you know?
Awesome. No, that's very fair and a good CYA statement from you.
Yeah. Well. I turned very political for a second, but that was my long-winded answer.
Yeah, very diplomatic. Brian has a question about about Facebook ads. So after growing organically to 11,000 subscribers, I started the SparkLoop Partner Program for paid acquisition the past 2 weeks. It is working really well. I am ready to add Facebook ads as well, but is there a benefit to waiting to launch the Facebook ads until I have some learnings from SparkLoop channel, or does it not matter?
Okay, so growing organically to 11K, so it's for paid acquisition. Is there a benefit to waiting? I don't think there is a benefit to waiting if you have reached that point. Again, like 10 to 15K, I say 15 to 25K is a sweet spot. If you are, it seems like you're would be definitely on the way to like growing 15 to 20K, or getting to 15 to 20K organically. I don't think there would be a benefit to waiting to launch the ads, mainly because it would just be one of those, like, I also believe in like channel diversification. Like I said, when I was at Morning Brew, we ran so many acquisition channels. Here at Workweek, we're in that process of channel diversification where we have some TikTok ads running. We're looking into Twitter ads. So it's one of those things where you definitely don't want to, I'll say this, I definitely would recommend, Brian, I definitely would recommend to start running Facebook ads because, and when I go back to channel diversification, I say it because it is all your eggs in one basket kind of method, where if at some point the SparkLoop Partner Program doesn't work for you, over time, or maybe things like dwindle down for it, you're just not seeing the results that you wanted to see, or maybe if you are projecting all your newsletter growth from paid to come from the SparkLoop Partner Program for the coming 6 months, and in month 2 or month 3 it's not working to your target CAC, where are you headed? It'd be better to start running the ads, get some learnings from Facebook, understand what you can do well and what isn't working on Facebook ads, and by that point, again, in month 2 or month 3, if for some reason something happened with the SparkLoop Partner Program that isn't to your liking, you have somewhere to go, or you just have 2 channels firing on all cylinders. There's really no negative to start getting at least the learnings from Facebook ads right now, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I like the idea of basically not putting all your eggs in one basket. So as something that's working well for you right now, it's basically like almost insurance a little bit, starting to test out another platform, see what's working, even if it's a lower budget, just kind of getting the feel for it. So you're not, if one platform all of a sudden dries up or something happens, you're not just starting from scratch and like scrambling. You already have a little bit of learning.
Yeah, totally.
So
that's just a very, very good mindset to have as a newsletter operator, especially if you're investing in paid growth at any scale. I think I thought about it, and we thought about it a lot on the growth team at Morning Brew and here at Workweek also, because there is at some point hundreds of thousands of dollars that if they're just going towards one platform, you don't know when things are going to go south, and if things do go south and you're again all eggs in one basket, you're scrambling at that point. So it's better to give yourself that insurance, know that you have other options, and the way that you can have other options is to give yourself some options by gathering data and starting to run on some other channels.
Yep, totally agree. Feel free to add any more questions into the queue, but in the meantime, I've got a few queued up for you on my end as well. Just from experience running a newsletter, I have not really dabbled with much in the way of paid ads because I've got a much smaller newsletter. But I am curious, if we talk about creative, I think we've talked a lot about sort of ad budgets and ad strategies that way, but we haven't really talked much about creative. So it's 2023. We're halfway through the year. What are you guys seeing working right now, maybe compared to like even what was working a year ago? Has that changed a lot? What's working, what's not? If you could give us kind of a quick lay of the land.
Yeah, sure thing. It's a great question. I'm trying to figure out what to withhold in my artillery. But no, I'll be transparent and share like what's really working nowadays and what I see across Workweek and other newsletters that I've shared, like what's working for them. And I see common trends. A year ago, a lot of it was UGC, so it was paying other third-party creators on Fiverr, finding them on TikTok, and just paying them to create a testimonial style ad, or you writing a script and them reading off of it. They deliver the video, you make some edits. That a year ago, I think that was definitely like the boom for newsletter ad creative. It just worked so well for most, because it was kind of like that main transition happened from only static ads to something new and something that a lot of people were hopping on the trend on, and it was just working. Especially with like the rise of TikTok. What's up?
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say that's mostly TikTok sort of style.
Mostly TikTok sort of style ads. Obviously, you run them on Facebook, Instagram. They'll show in feed. Most of the time, it's volume off. So always make sure you should definitely still do these nowadays. Try to test it out, but always make sure captions are on them, because if you run them on Facebook, Instagram, they might show up in feed. If you don't, within the ad sets, if you're not changing the dynamic placements. But if they show up in feed, the volume is going to be off. So you want to make sure captions are going to be on.
Right.
But you change these from TikTok, you repurpose them over to Facebook and Instagram. We saw a lot of success, both at Morning Brew and here at Workweek when we were doing it. Is if we at first tested it on TikTok, or vice versa, if we first tested it on Facebook, Instagram, and it was doing really well on stories or reels, be like, okay, this is obviously a winner. Throw it to TikTok, and it was always going to be a winner. 90% of the time is like, whether you test it on either platform, if it's a winner on either platform, it's going to be on the other platform. So that was a year ago. I still think it's definitely something you should test out. With a good script, with good copywriting, some good storytelling, they are going to still work. The second, or nowadays on what I see, is really like two things. Very, very simple ads. I know we saw that trend in the newsletter ad space, where everyone was just doing like a notes, like the screenshot of the notes app on the iPhone.
Yeah.
I loved it because it's like, okay, there's literally no way you can give me an excuse for I can't make ad creative kind of thing. Like, just go to your notes app, write some text, screenshot it, and that's your ad. Very, very simple stuff like that is working nowadays. I see it like that style was working for a while. There was, I think some people still do it. It's like the sticky notes, where they write the same message that you write in your notes app. You would write it on a sticky note, take a picture of that sticky note, and throw it up as an ad. Make a cool background or something, and it's just it's very weird. Some people call it simple, some people call it ugly. Whatever way you want to call it, it works, and it has worked for a lot of newsletter ads to get a pretty good CPA. And this is one thing that I think works incredibly well nowadays is short form, and well, I shouldn't say short form video, because like the assumption will be UGC because it is short form video. But when I mean short form video, it's 10 to 12 seconds of a clip, and there is no face to the ad. There's mainly three elements. A dynamic background, so something like moving in the background. It could be like some drone footage that you found on stock footage or whatever. Text overlay. You've seen these on TikTok for sure. If you scroll on TikTok, you've seen this before, where it's just a dynamic background, like a moving background, and there might be scenery. Text overlay, which is your message for the ad, talking about like the value proposition of the ad. Throw in a CTA in that text, and some background music, some trending background music from TikTok. Those three elements, you can come back to me and say, like, why did I see you wrong? But I guarantee you I probably didn't see you wrong if you try that ad creative nowadays, because I do see it working very, very well for any newsletter, B2B or B2C, for sure.
And just so I'm clear, the background imagery or the visual, it might have absolutely nothing
to do. Yeah, if you are a like if you are a marketing newsletter, you could like the background could be a beach scene or a beach sunset scene. What matters is the three elements coming together. Obviously, the messaging is the most important part, is to make sure that people are reading it and they know what the newsletter is about, what the USP is or whatever, and a CTA. That's the key component. But those other two components, it doesn't really matter. You could play like Nicki Minaj. If it's a popular trending TikTok song, it's probably going to work, because it's really just a psychology play where most people know like, or I understand like what is it about that keeps a user in a trance almost when they end up seeing the ad. It's the background, the dynamic background, and the trending TikTok sound that they know it's out there right now, so they're gonna, for some reason, continue to stay on the ad and read the whole paragraph that you wrote on screen. It doesn't have to be a paragraph. I swear it's somewhere between like 20 to 25 words, including your CTA.
Wow. I was gonna ask you why these ads work, but I mean, you summed that up beautifully. Yeah, so of course, it's bizarre to me that would work, but I mean, the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah, and take it with a grain of salt, but maybe I shot myself in the foot and now everyone's going to do this, or people aren't going to believe me. But either way, I know it works, and I don't think there's a way to saturate it, because it's such a simple method, and it's such a popular organic video that like you're never going to get away from them, whether you're just watching your regular TikTok feed or Reels feed. And then an ad pops up and it's the same style. You kind of enjoy them. I know I enjoy them when they just come up organically and they're not even an ad. So if you can, give some value, it's almost like a dopamine hit at the same time, because that's all you go to TikTok and Reels for. So that it's like kills two birds in one stone for someone, I guess.
I think that's why I had to delete TikTok on my phone a few months ago.
I applaud you. I've only had to keep it because of work, obviously, and trying to QA ads. But I would have deleted it a long time ago. Also, would have saved hours of my life.
Yeah, exactly. So Matthias has a question. Forgive me again if I mispronounce your name. What organic growth strategies have worked best for all of you? Question directly meaning to other newsletter operators in here, but if Manny has something to add, would love to hear it as well. I've mainly done Reddit for now. I'm slowly starting Twitter. Would love to hear what has worked for you. And just to maybe tag on to the end of that, I have seen a lot more newsletter ads in my Twitter feed lately. It seems to just be something that's been either just been showing me just because of the content I'm consuming maybe more of, but it seems to be something that people are trying more. So I'll let you take it from there.
I think there's definitely a lot happening when it comes to organic growth. There's a lot of it happening between Twitter and LinkedIn. I think Brian just mentioned something here about cross-posting the content from newsletter on LinkedIn in a format more appropriate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Twitter and LinkedIn are. I know Reddit has always been one of those more scrappy organic growth ways to go about things, but it works. It still works. Obviously, you could probably go on Quora, do the same thing, answer some questions, provide your newsletter as a link, as a resource or whatever. Totally. So that definitely works, and you can easily put in an hour of your day and make it work. But to get it to a more organic growth flywheel, I think definitely test, and if it works, double down on LinkedIn and Twitter. Depending on your newsletter, obviously, but from what I've seen, obviously, what I've seen recently is Twitter threads, and sometimes Twitter mini threads. I would first, before I forget, I'd recommend everyone try to follow Justin Welsh, I think is his name. He runs the newsletter. I know his name is Saturday Solarpreneur. Very popular guy on LinkedIn. Justin Welsh has these methods in terms of organic growth, and he shares them all the time. There's threads is one of them, where you obviously tell the story and have your newsletter somewhat relate to it, so that it's a link at the bottom and the CTA at the bottom. The second thing is mini threads, where I forget her name. She does it super, super well. It's almost like a mini thread slash a preview of the newsletter. I forget her name.
Caitlin, is it Caitlin Borgwin?
Does she run Growth in Reverse or?
Oh, that's Chanel.
Yeah, Chanel.
Yeah.
She's like she kills it, mastermind at it on Twitter. It's if you search up Growth in Reverse, you'll see what she's done previously, where she gives a sneak peek of what the newsletter is going to be about. Does very, very good copywriting, and it's just one tweet that gives that preview of what the newsletter is going to be about. And the second tweet is, if you want to actually hear about this on my deep dive and whatever, her second tweet is the CTA towards subscribing. I'm sure it always gets, given that the copywriting and the hook is really good on the first tweet, I'm sure it always gets a couple hundred subscribers, maybe like 50 to 100 on a bad day. But those are the two things. And then LinkedIn, I think it really comes down to like your copywriting and sometimes just your form of getting creative on LinkedIn when it comes to like entertaining also. I don't think people can like fully replicate it, because there is a method to the madness, and there is a way to like really hone it in. And it also takes, the LinkedIn algorithm actually liking you. Your first two posts might not do well. But if you look at, again, like at Workweek, the Marketing Millennials, he does it so well. Daniel Murray. He does it so well on LinkedIn to where he provides that value. It might just be a meme that might be a value, because it's entertaining, it's relatable. And because it's entertaining and relatable, you can throw in a CTA and say, if you want a little bit more of, this, but in newsletter form, here's a CTA to the newsletter. The second thing that I'll go back to Twitter and LinkedIn and how they work together: repurpose your Twitter threads or mini threads into LinkedIn carousels. I know there's a weird thing. I don't do it myself. There's an organic growth team here at Workweek that mainly puts together. I know there's a weird thing going on with carousels on LinkedIn, but I think if you upload everything as PDFs, if you take screenshots of each thread, upload them to LinkedIn as PDFs, it'll make a carousel. And that's another great way to drive organic growth, is by repurposing that over. I know there's 3 or 4 people on LinkedIn that absolutely crush it every single day, every single week. Tons of engagement, and I can only imagine that they get hundreds of subscribers, if not thousands, every single week from doing this. So those are like two or three of the main organic growth strategies that I know work, that I can definitely say to try them out if you have the means of, putting your copywriting hat on, putting some content out there and just testing it out. Because I know over time it'll definitely pay dividends for sure on the organic growth side.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's funny that you mentioned both Justin and Chanel, because I first saw Justin doing that strategy that you mentioned that Chanel does. So I wouldn't be surprised if Chanel's super bright, so she may have come up with that on her own. But I know Justin, he was probably the first person on Twitter who I saw who basically like teased this idea that made you go, I want to learn that. And then he followed it up with, but then you should subscribe to my newsletter, because I will share it with you.
Gotcha.
And I was just like, well, if I wasn't subscribed, I would be right now, and I already was.
Yeah, so maybe Chanel did get it from Justin. I only learned about Justin from LinkedIn. For some reason, his stuff never came up on Twitter for me. But I found out about Justin on LinkedIn, and then I always saw Chanel's stuff on Twitter. So yeah, the two probably work together, and Chanel shares all of this stuff in her news. That's one newsletter that I absolutely recommend everyone subscribe to, because she shares, and her deep dives share like actionable tips every single time to actually put into place for your own newsletter, based on stuff that's already worked for other newsletter operators. So I would definitely recommend that one. Yeah. And if you want to improve on your copywriting hat and improve on like your systems for thread writing LinkedIn content, Justin Welsh is the guy. He has like proven methods to I guess put into place. Got a quick course also that I took just to like really understand what's going on in his head, and it's super valuable stuff for sure.
Yeah, he's had a few pretty good courses. I think his first one was basically on LinkedIn
Yeah.
growth, right? Like becoming like an ace LinkedIn
Yeah.
operator. So
Totally.
yeah, I highly recommend checking both those two accounts out. I shared them in the
Cool.
chat there. Also share Daniel Murray's, because Daniel, he's like from a marketing perspective on LinkedIn, just what he shares, the knowledge and the value he shares in there is pretty.
Daniel
Nice.
is for sure a top 3 marketing guru in my eyes out there. Like
Yeah.
he knows what he's doing, and he shares a lot of stuff in his newsletter all the time. Just overall, just jack of all trades kind of guy for sure, and knows what to put in place and when to put it in place, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So check those two people out. I'm also going to share here right now a few links for you guys as well to check out, since we're coming up on the hour, for you to follow Manny. So I've got his Twitter feed here, LinkedIn. I've also got Workweek and a few other links here. So do you want to quickly give us, just fill us in on sort of what Workweek is doing for the kind of the creators, the creator economy and stuff right now, just as we close out here? Give it a little shout for Workweek and what people can
Absolutely.
learn from there.
I think at a high level, when we talk about Justin Welsh, when we talk about Chanel, when we talk about Daniel Murray, there's one thing in common with everything we just said. They are people. They are not brands. I worked for Morning Brew, but they had Morning Brew. They had Marketing Brew, Retail Brew, Money Scoop, etc. Those are brands coming from a larger entity. And what we just talked about, again, Chanel, Justin, all these creators that are out there, they are the brand. And I think I know that's the reason why Adam, Ryan, and Becca started Workweek, is because they knew and they understood that the trend now, not just a trend, but it's just somewhere that eyeballs are just more they're relating to more, is people. People follow people, not companies, not brands anymore. Obviously, they still want to get their content from some media companies and whatnot, but I think the short term and long term direction that things are going in is people following people. And so I definitely would say that that's what Workweek is going double down on, is understanding that within B2B, it was always like a very boring space kind of thing in terms of industry newsletters, and not knowing that there was a face behind it, or you really didn't understand who was writing it or why they were writing it, why they are credible, kind of stuff. So I think that's where it comes into play with Workweek, where you can hear the story of the creator. You can hear the story of what they do for their full-time job. A lot of our creators have full-time jobs also in their own industry. Mm-hmm. So you can see their credibility from that perspective. It's almost like you're living through that creator in that industry through the newsletter. And that's what I think is a very good value prop of each newsletter, where you always feel like you're living behind the scenes of your industry through that creator and through the content that they're putting out. So that's what I think they're doing. We're just not maybe pioneering what that looks like in terms of the creator model, and having it all under one umbrella. But I know a lot of creators on the B2C side, I see a lot of creators doing it on their own, and it's working really, really well. Both B2C and B2B, with certain things. But that's definitely what I think Workweek is doing really well right now. And also just understanding how understanding and testing how far you can take your audience rather than just showing them an ad in terms of monetization, and how Workweek is looking at, just growing revenue year over year, month over month, is to not definitely, again, one of those all eggs in one basket, to not just say that we are a company that is going to run ads in all these B2B newsletters. It's trying to see if they will join the community, see if how much trust has been built up between this audience and this newsletter creator, to the point where you can make that audience take out credit cards and join a community or take a course or um, fly to New York for an event or something. And we see it happening every single week here at Workweek, where it's just so many things stacking on top of each other because of that trust that is built from the audience to the newsletter creator. And that all comes from content, obviously, and making sure that the creator is putting out the most valuable content possible. So I think those are just some of the things that are working very, very well here at Workweek so far. And I don't see it. I don't see it stopping. I think it's one of those things that you can definitely try to mirror it or try to like do your best to like put it into place for your own newsletter, but it takes a village. I would say it's a one man show is good, just for sustainability. You're not having to stress too much, but it does take a village for some of these things. You just have to start small and test it out for the most part. But I do see it as an option for so many newsletter creators if they're just running their own solo thing, especially if this is just a side hustle with their newsletters and trying to monetize it also.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It reminds me a little bit of Gimlet Media for podcasting when they started up back in the day, and they just kind of started with one show, and then they had all these different brands kind of under this podcast media brand. And so I feel like that's like Workweek is that for newsletters, creator newsletters specifically. So it's really cool. I think sky's the limit for you guys. So we're watching you close. We love what you're doing, and wishing you the best too. So thanks for hopping on with us here, Manny. We really appreciate your time and for answering all the questions. And I've got links here for everyone if you want to check out Manny. And also, I will be sharing this. I'll be sharing this replay as well. You'll eventually be able to find it on YouTube, but I'll also share it in an email out to all the attendees. Yeah. So look for that in your mailbox if you want to review. So thanks again, Manny, and have a great rest of your week.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Dylan. You take care, man.
No problem.
All right.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.